The Vertical podcast with Adrian Wojnarowski featured Bulls GM of the time, the aforementioned Jerry Krause. Jerry spoke about this moment and the disgusting mess of pus and blood that was made cleaning up MJ's foot. It was suggested that MJ rest for 2 weeks. Instead, MJ later cornered Krause and Collins, suggesting that they let him try the foot out the next night, and then he went out and dropped 43 on San Antonio.
San Antonio. I
always like to say that Michael got to play with me for a year at North Carolina. I think it really helped him.
Spectacular player from the beginning.
You can see right away Jordan was going to be a big-time scorer.
And showed what an impact he was going to have on the league.
This is NB87, celebrating the 30-year anniversary of Michael Jordan's Chicago Bulls in the 1987 NBA season. Now here's your hosts, Adam Ryan and Aaron Steen.
Welcome back to another episode of NB87, up to episode 4 in our series, Aaron. Thanks for joining me as always, mate. Welcome to new listeners and those familiar with the show already. How are you today, mate?
Very well. Thank you, Adam. Looking forward to expanding on my newly intimate relationship with the 86-87 Bulls.
Already bordering on some dodgy territory there, mate.
NBA News, Notes and Quotes, December 1st through 15th, 1986.
Let's get straight into it. There were no games on the 1st of December, so by virtue of that, let's head straight to the 2nd. Now, on the back of a 117-109 win, the Washington Bullets put an end to Boston's streak of 48 consecutive home victories. The game was played in Hartford, Connecticut, which was Boston's then home away from home. 3 of the Celtics' 48 straight wins were on this floor, and Boston were outscored 36-23 in the last quarter.
That'll do it.
Great friend of the show, Bob Hill, episode 14 of the podcast, had his head coaching debut on this date. His Knicks were defeated, however, by the Phoenix Suns, 124-100. And after a slow start to the season, the Knicks had fired Hubie Brown and had replaced him with Bob Hill. Larry Nance paced the Suns at 25 points.
I was going to say, Bob Hill had his head coaching debut. What happened to Hubie? But you've just answered that question for me.
Yes. Brown out. Well, that doesn't sound too good. Hill in. Anyhow, I'll probably delete that. Not a great start. Chicago visited Seattle on this same date in front of 13,438 fans, and Chicago held on for a 115-109 win in overtime. So a great win there for the Bulls in this early season. They moved to 8-6 on the year. And for Chicago, in a stream of what would be fantastic performances from Michael Jeffrey Jordan, Jordan paced the way with 40 points, 9 rebounds, 6 assists, 3 steals, and a career-high 6 blocks. Now, just remarkable stats all around there. Charles Oakley had 24 points and 12 boards. Johnny Paxson, 24 points. His career high would be 28 points in the 1991 season in a game that we've actually recapped at Boston. And check out episode 61 of the show where a great mate of ours, Todd Spear, joins us to break down that game, mate. Bit of a 3-man weave. And for the Sonics, Tom Chambers had 29 points and 12 boards. X-Man Xavier McDaniel had 29 points as well to go with 10 boards. Dale Ellis, former guest and friend of the show, 21 points in episode 57. Actually, he didn't score 21 points in episode. And Alton Lister had 10 points and 11 rebounds.
Angered Jordan lifts Bulls was the headline. The X-Man talked trash and poked MJ in the face, and the result was a 109-115 Supersonics loss in overtime. It was the 7th time in 14 games that MJ had dropped 40, and 3 of those points came on a 3-point play with 34 seconds left in regulation that sent the game into overtime. He then dropped the first 8 points in the overtime period. MJ's confrontation with McDaniel happened as he stood at the foul line to shoot free throws with 46 seconds left in the extra period. He and McDaniel exchanged words. Then Xavier then walked up to MJ and flicked his finger in Jordan's face.
It's ridiculous. What's he doing?
MJ pointed back and advanced at him until Charles Oakley intervened.
I love it. There's Oak.
MJ then sank both free throws. And then after the ensuing Sonics timeout, Jordan blocked his 6th shot, an attempt by Tommy C. At the other end, he sought out the X-Man and drained a 17-footer on him and then stared at him going back to the other end. Post-game, Doug Collins approved of the Jordan payback, saying that when he gets that look in his eyes, it's over.
That's fantastic.
The Bulls entered the fourth down by 8, but got great play from Oakley and Paxson, whose steal led to Jordan's game-tying and 1. And as you mentioned before, MJ's extraordinary stat line, 49, 6, 3, and 6. Michael was named the NBA's Player of the Month for November, beating out a field of stars, including teammate Charles Oakley.
Lots of good stuff happening there. MJ getting poked in the face. That's just redonkulous stuff by McDaniel. We're talking about the 3rd of December here. 4 of the 5 games on this date were decided by less than 6 points. 2 were overtime affairs. Denver outlasted New Jersey 107-106, and Philadelphia defeated Milwaukee 115-110. Now, on the same date, Chicago at Utah in front of 12,212 fans saw the Jazz hang on for a 99-94 victory. The Bulls dropped to 8-7 on the season. For Chicago, Jordan was again on fire. 45 points, 3 rebounds, 3 assists, and 6 steals. Oakley, 16 points and 14 rebounds, and Dave Corzine, 10 points and 8 boards. For Utah, Karl Malone had 24 points and 10 rebounds. Bobby Hansen, future Chicago Bull, 18 points, 5 rebounds and 3 assists. And another great friend of the show, Mark Eaton, episode 49 of the podcast, had 9 points, 14 rebounds, and 7 blocks. So doing a good job there again, as usual, Mark Eaton.
Bob Sakamoto's accompanying article was titled Jordan's 45 Can't Save Bulls. 2 lapses laid waste to Jordan's 4th straight 40-point game. A 15-5 Jazz run at the end of the 3rd term was lapse number 1. The second was after Jordan had 3 straight steals and 6 consecutive points to give the Bulls an 86-85 lead with 3:59 remaining, only to have the Jazz reel off 8 straight points as a tired Jordan was searching for a 3rd and 4th win on the second night of a back-to-back. Coach Collins played rookie Brad Sellers only 4 minutes, a season low, after what he perceived to be a lack of effort from Brad. The NBA's leading rebounding team got hammered on the boards by the Jazz. Oakley led Chicago with 14 rebounds but struggled offensively, shooting only 5 for 18 with the persistent threat of Mark Eaton disrupting him. MJ, however, had a spectacular dunk over the NBA's leading shot blocker early in the 4th quarter.
I wonder if that's the one going to the right of screen where Mark did try to challenge Jordan and Jordan rammed it home. Not actually sure if that's the one or not. On the 4th of December, there were 6 games. The high scorer was Seattle's Tom Chambers, aka Tommy C, who dropped 36 points at San Antonio, guiding his Sonics to a 109-102 victory. Now, on the 5th, Chicago, continuing their road trip, travelled to Phoenix in the Valley of the Sun in front of 14,519, who saw the Suns hold on for a 114-112 win. The Bulls dropped to 8-8. For Chicago, Jordan was on fire again with another 40-plus point game. He had 43 this time. Charles Oakley, 15 points, 9 rebounds and 7 assists, so a fantastic effort from Charles. Earl Latwell Curitin had 15 points. Brad Sellers had 10 points and 7 rebounds. And Dave Corzine, almost a double-double, 9 points and 9 boards. And for Phoenix, Walter Davis lit it up with 31 points. Larry Nance added 20 to go with 14 rebounds and 8 assists. And Jay Humphries, 16 points and 12 assists.
Walter Davis with 31 points. No wonder MJ wanted him on his team. Or did he?
If people could only see the look of incredulousness on your face there, mate.
According to Jerry Krause, he never asked for any players on the team.
Yeah, that's right. And rest in peace to Jerry.
On the Chicago at Phoenix game, the Bulls may have lost more than another heartbreaker against the Suns. They may have also lost their heart and soul for a game of 2. Immediately after missing a 20-footer with 1 second to go, which would have sent the game into overtime, Michael Jordan was stretched out on the trainer's table, having his right foot cleaned out by Suns Dr. Paul Steingard from an infection caused by a corn.
Wow.
Not a can of corn or sorry, you know what I'm talking about.
Oh, I do. What a great throwback to a previous episode. Said nobody except me.
The Vertical podcast with Adrian Wojnarowski featured Bulls GM of the time, the aforementioned Jerry Krause. Jerry spoke about this moment and the disgusting mess of pus and blood that was made cleaning up MJ's foot. It was suggested that MJ rest for 2 weeks at the recommendation of Steingard. Instead, MJ later cornered Krause and Collins, suggesting that they let him try the foot out the next night, and then he went out and dropped 43 on San Antonio.
San Antonio. Now, in one of the most remarkable scorelines that I can ever recall, Seattle at Houston pummeled the Rockets by 56 points, 136 to 80. And at the time, this was the 6th largest margin of victory in NBA history. For Seattle, Tom Chambers was super with 29 points in just 3 quarters. And to sum it up, it's fair to say that Houston fans, Elijah Want, remember this game very fondly. Speaking of Akeem, he had a DNP. He actually missed quite a few games during this period of time. He had a bruised knee. And all 11 Sonics players scored points in this game, including Curtis Kitchen, who registered 5 of his 9 career points in this said game. Went to basketballreference.com, and he appeared in 6 NBA games during this season, all against Western Conference opponents, for what it's worth. I just thought that was definitely worth mentioning.
So you could really say that Curtis threw the kitchen sink at the Rockets during this game, registering 5 of his 9 career points.
One of the great names of the 1980s, no doubt there. I had a sinking feeling that probably we would both try and have a go at making silly plays on words, and mission accomplished. Hello to Curtis, though, if you are listening.
Yes.
Chicago, on the 6th, at San Antonio, the Spurs were 106 to 97 winners, and the Bulls had dropped 3 consecutive games. They were 8 and 9. Jordan was still on fire, as you alluded to. He had 43 points, 5 boards and 3 assists. And Charles Oakley had 15 points and 7 rebounds. Dave Corzine, 13 points and 6 boards. Earl Curitan had 11 points and 9 rebounds. And for San Antonio, Alvin Robertson had 30 points. Johnny Dawkins had 28 points and 7 assists in only 32 minutes. So great output there from the NBA Rook.
An 18-2 Spurs run led by Alvin Robertson and the guy the Bulls passed up in the recent NBA draft, Johnny Dawkins. It raised a 15-point Bulls lead in the third term. Doug Collins said his players looked like they were in cement as Robertson and Dawkins looked like blurs despite Jordan's 6th straight 40-point game. MJ told Collins that his players let him down in relaxing after leading by as much as 21 points. Oakley shot the ball well but committed 9 turnovers, and John Paxson went just 1 for 7, extending his mini slump to 4 of his last 21 shots. A 40-17 Spurs third term had Chicago down 81-73 after 3. That's a lot of threes. And San Antonio double and triple teamed Air Jordan down the stretch.
And Paxson also playing against his former team as well wouldn't have been happy with the fact he had such ordinary production. This recap comes from the 7th, of course, and 2 games were played on this date. One was an overtime thriller, the other an absolute yawner. Portland, led by Clyde Drexler's 26 points, claimed a 107-104 victory, making it 4 straight wins, and they defeated the New York Knicks, who were visiting the Memorial Coliseum. Almost forgot where they were playing. The game went to overtime following a 16-foot buzzer beater to end regulation, courtesy of Gerald Henderson.
Henderson steals the ball!
In the day's other game, the LA Lakers defeated Golden State 132-100. Coach Pat Riley registered his 300th career victory, and to that point, he reached that milestone faster than any coach in NBA history in just 416 games total. He broke the previously held mark of 430 games by the Kangaroo Kid, Billy Cunningham, and in a tidbit that is nearly certain to make minutia lovers unite, Riley and Cunningham had shared the record for the fastest coaches to reach 200 victories. On the 8th of December, there were no games. However, mate, there was obviously a Bulls recap.
The Bulls' reliance on Michael Jordan was detailed by The Sack on the aforementioned December 8th. Teams were beginning to react to MJ's dominance by sending triple teams at him, cutting off players nearest to him and making him throw cross-court passes, which I thought was a very detailed breakdown from Bob. The need for other players to contribute was starting to rear its head as MJ's 6 straight 40-point games had resulted in just one overtime win in Seattle. The Bulls were staying close down the stretch of games, but their opponents were cutting off their main scoring threat with additional defenders in his face. Doug Collins was, however, happy with the way the team had been playing, aside from the second half letdown in San Antonio. Robin Banks was due to return this week, with Darren Day expected to make way for him on the roster.
I don't know if Gene Banks has actually listened to any episodes from our series, but as we like to say from time to time, mate, these nicknames are all said with love. We obviously love our old school NBA players, but we have to entertain ourselves a little bit and throw in their nicknames on occasion.
Mum enjoys the jokes too, so that's our one listener taken care of.
That's great.
Talk of an impending trade that would send Artis Gilmore back to the Bulls was also mentioned on this day. However, Jerry Krause added that getting the 37-year-old centre doesn't fit in with the Bulls' youth plans.
Interesting.
The Bulls were about to embark on 4 games in 5 nights in 4 different cities against the likes of Denver, Atlanta, and Milwaukee.
They had a pretty torrid road schedule, didn't they, early on? As the sack alluded to. Jordan's incredible performances were offset by the fact they lost a majority of those games. So, a double-edged sword, I guess you'd say.
And on December 9, Geno Banks received some good karma after helping a man suffering from a kidney stone attack. The man was slumped across his hood in the parking garage across the street from Dr. Heffern's office.
Whoa.
As Banks was about to attend an appointment with him. In the aforementioned appointment, Banks was then told by Hefferon that he was ready to suit up for the Bulls in their next game against Denver. Banks explained how lonely he had been rehabbing with the team on the road and that he got daily calls from Oakley and Jordan. One person he didn't get daily calls from was Jerry Krause. There was one call Krause did make to Banks during his rehab, but it wasn't to talk about his foot, but instead to tell him the team wouldn't pay for a plane ticket for him to join his teammates in San Antonio.
Wow.
Banks ended up paying for his own ticket. He also showed his appreciation for Bulls fans and told everyone he has a surprise for them in an upcoming game.
That's fantastic. As I say on occasion, I'm glad I don't go out of my way to try and read your notes in advance because my reaction to this is, well, as everybody that is just listening to it. So there you go. Thanks, Mr. Obvious. I'm just stating the redundant comments today.
In other Bulls news, a switch to the starting lineup was expected against Denver, with Mike Brown expected to replace Granville Waiters.
We should have, mate, great friend of the show, Mike Brown. G'day, Mike. Hope you're listening. Episode 62 of In All Airness podcast.
The Bulls were due to catch the Nuggets at the end of a 7-game road trip in which they have gone 1-5 and allowed a staggering 120 points per game. X-rays on Dave Corzine's lower back came up clear. Dr. Hefferon feared that Dave had slipped a disc, and John Macbeth Paxson refused to use his sprained left hand as an excuse for his recent poor shooting.
Sacramento ended its 6-game losing skid, upending the hometown New Jersey Nets 120-107, thanks largely to Rush Street Reggie's 33 points, 18 of which Theus dropped in the last quarter. This was the Nets' 12th loss in 13 games. Ouch. Chicago hosted Denver. 10,717 fans were in attendance, and the Bulls held on for a 106-100 win, despite not making a field goal in the first 7.5 minutes of the last quarter, and they improved to 9-9 on the season. For Chicago, Jordan had 40 points, 6 rebounds, 6 assists, 3 steals, and 4 blocks. John Paxson had 19 points and 10 assists, so good to see him get out of his slump, and Charles Oakley had 13 rebounds. For Denver, Alex English had 28 points, ever reliable. Danny Shays had 16 points, 12 rebounds and 5 assists, good effort there from Dan. And Fat Lever, 12 points, 10 rebounds and 10 assists in what's otherwise known as a triple-double. Good stuff there from Lafayette.
Hashtag Fat Love. Gene Banks ramboed into the night in his khaki camo outfit, complete with combat boots and infantryman's headgear, wrote Bob Sakamoto.
Is this the surprise that he's talking about?
I have no idea.
What is going on?
I have no idea. Banks was met with a hug from Coach Collins and a 7-minute per half playing restriction coming off his foot injury. His great play during the game earned him 25 minutes of play, leading to MJ reminding Jerry Krause after the game. And I quote, "Hey, Jerry, Gino played more than 14 minutes tonight," end quote.
Oh, I love that.
"The doctors never limited Gene's playing time," replied Krause, to which Jordan shot back, and I quote, "Oh, so I'm the only one that you do that to," end quote.
That's fantastic. Not so subtle dig back to the 1985-86 campaign. Hashtag NB86.
The Paxson, Banks and Turner second unit overtook the Nuggets bench squad in the second term and gave Chicago a lead they wouldn't relinquish. If the bench continued to deliver, Collins was considering moving Paxson into the starting five at the expense of Buffon-Coulter, who played only 5 minutes against Denver. On the Vertical podcast with Woj, Jerry Krause recalled the treatment Jordan would often give to Steve Coulter in practice. Coulter was renowned to be a nice guy, and apparently Jordan rode Coulter hard, completely destroying his confidence in the process.
Like many players throughout Jordan's tenure, based on continued reports even to this day, maniacal, obviously, is a great word to sum up Jordan. Coulter was apparently a great guy, and as we mentioned on a previous episode of this series, I believe, he had some very generous donations that he would give to particular cities that he's actually had dealings with in the past throughout his basketball career.
I can recall us talking about the love that the Trailblazer fans showed to Coulter when he returned to Portland.
I did have a lot of time for him. Now, returning to games on the 9th, Portland's Kiki Vandeweghe dropped 40 points on the Spurs as his Trailblazers chalked up a great road win at San Antonio. On the 10th, Chicago at Atlanta in front of 16,522 fans saw the Atlanta Hawks demolish the Bulls, 123-95. Chicago dropped to 9-10 on the season. Now, Jordan's stats were usurped by one Dominique Wilkins. We'll get to that in a moment. Jordan still had an incredible 41-point, 4-rebound, 4-assist effort. Johnny Pax, 11 points and 8 assists. Charles Oakley, 8 points and 10 boards. For Atlanta, Dominique Wilkins, 57 points, 9 rebounds, 4 assists, and Doc Rivers, 19 points and 13 assists. Now, Neek's 57 tied his career high from April 10 of 86 versus the New Jersey Nets, and hashtag NB86 again there. Check out a previous episode of that series where we talk a bit more about this incredible effort from Dominique. Another 57-point game.
This basketball game evolved into a one-on-one playground spectacular for the 16,522 sellout at the Omni. The essence of this game was playground basketball as Atlanta reeled off the game's first 14 points, 8 by Neek. The Hawks led 65-48 at the half. The closest the Bulls got after that point was 9. And at that point, the Hawks hit them with a 15-0 run to put a bow on the contest.
Game over.
Doug Collins admitted after the game that 3 of Atlanta's subs in Rollins, McGee, and Livingston would probably start for the Bulls. The much more talented Hawks had created a championship fever in the city, and they were comparing themselves to the Bears in football and the Yankees in baseball.
Wow, okay. In other games on the 10th, Dallas trailed Portland late, but managed to acquire a 130-129 win, courtesy of Mark's 12-foot turnaround jumper with 5 seconds left in the game. It was the Mavericks' 8th win in 9 games and also snapped the Blazers' 5-game win streak. Portland's Kiki led the Vandeweghe, I've said that before, with 31 points, whilst Aguirre's 27 points topped all Mavs scorers. At Denver, John Stockton, having driven strong to the hoop with just a second remaining, nailed the game-winning layup for Utah. And the final score, Jazz 112, Nuggets 110. On the 11th, there were 4 games on this date, and our high scorer was X-Man McDaniel. X-Man McDaniel. Xavier McDaniel. Jeez, my notes are all over the shop. Who notched 33 points in his Supersonics 113-107 win over the visiting San Antonio Spurs. On the 12th of December, Chicago at Milwaukee, in front of 11,052, saw Chicago hand the Bucks a 106-93 loss, and it snapped the 4-game road losing streak of Chicago. They improved to 10-10, and Jordan had another 40-plus point game. He dropped 41 points, 5 rebounds and 3 assists on the Bucks. Oakley had a great game, 18 points and 16 boards. Paxson, 15 points and 8 assists. And Alston Turner, 10 points and 5 assists. For Milwaukee, Craig Hodges, future Chicago Bull, 23 points, and Terry Cummings, episode 17, great friend of the show, had 23 points as well. Ricky Pierce, great friend of the show. Episode 28, hello Ricky if you're listening. Jack Sigma and Paul Pressey all had at least 10 points apiece. The shameless self-promotion is really getting out of control. It's almost implied that everybody is a great friend of the show. Back to a great friend of the show, Aaron Steen. What do you want to say there, mate?
In MJ's 9th straight game of 40 or more points, Doug Collins started 3 guards and 2 forwards in some creative coaching. Jordan even jumped centre at the opener.
Oh, that's awesome.
Post-game, MJ said he wasn't concentrating on Wilt Chamberlain's record of 14 straight 40-point games and added that he was aware that if he takes a bad shot, people will think that he has the milestone in mind. Back to the game. Bucks coach Don Nelson complimented Collins' small lineup to match the Bucks for pace and added Bulls advanced scout John Bark will be sitting in the nosebleeds next time he wants to come into their building after doing a great job scouting the Bucks.
Get Bark up there and sit down.
The Bulls.
That was pathetic. Don't even humour me. That was pathetic.
The Bulls never panicked with the Bucks pressing defense as Milwaukee was constantly punished by Jordan, who found his open teammates. The Bulls shot 54.2% to Milwaukee's 43.7%, and Collins got an improved game from Oakley, who had recently struggled with turnovers. The SAC added that Doug Collins had brought along his 9-year-old daughter Kelly on their recent road trip as a birthday present, and he planned to use the same starting lineup for the second leg of the home and home against the Bucks at the stadium.
Kelly Collins.
Kelly.
Have not heard her mentioned. Barely ever.
Yeah.
So, yeah, good stuff there to get a Kelly Collins mention. Returning to games on the 12th, at Detroit, Washington maloned the Pistons, securing a 116-115 win thanks to a 12-foot jumper from Moses with 2 seconds left. He'd just rebounded a missed shot from the Bullets' other Malone, Jeff, who led all scorers with 30 points, and Moses had 27 for what it's worth. Joe Dumas' game-winning attempt at the buzzer was no good. On the 13th, at Cleveland, Philadelphia's Charles Barkley scored a would-be season high of 41 points. However, the Cavs had the last laugh, taking a 123-120 win. For Cleveland, rookies Ron Harper and Mark Price scored 34 points and 27 points respectively.
Wow.
Price reached 27 points in only 27 minutes off the bench, if you don't mind, and it was his only 20-plus point game of his rookie campaign. So pretty cool there.
I'd love to know in the record books how that stands as a 2 rookie scoring output in a single game. That's a ripper, isn't it?
It is.
Yeah.
What is it? 61 points. I'm glad I can do maths. 61 points from 2 rooks. Great effort. Atlanta took a bite out of the Big Apple with a 122-1. Who writes this stuff? With a 122-110 win at New York. The 5-18 Knicks were led wonderfully by 1986 Rookie of the Year Patrick Ewing, who had a would-be season high of 43 points. Gerald Wilkins also had an excellent 30-point and 12-assist effort. And for the winners, Gerald's brother Jacques led the Hawks with 24 points. Kevin Willis had 21 points and 11 rebounds.
2 things. A, who is this Jacques that you refer to? And secondly, nice little hat tip to Bob Costas back there.
Yes.
Who rates this stuff?
Thank you for that. I thought it was pretty good. Also on the 13th, Chicago hosted Milwaukee in front of a great crowd, 17,335. Chicago were completely walloped. I'm not sure how it can be completely walloped. They lost the game 113-90 and dropped back below 500 to 10-11. For Chicago, Johnny Paxson led all scorers with 16 points, which is a fair indication that Jordan's 40-point streak may have come to an end. May have. Brad Sellers, 15 points and 7 rebounds. Michael Jordan, 11 points. On 3 of 17 shooting. Had 4 rebounds and 4 assists. And Mike Brown, 8 points and 9 rebounds.
You're about to hear why MJ only scored 11 points.
Okay, thanks. For Milwaukee, Paul Pressey had 20 points, 5 rebounds and 6 assists. And Terry Cummings had 18 points and 7 rebounds. Now, Jordan's 11 points was the equal 3rd lowest scoring output of his Chicago Bulls career. And as you alluded to a moment ago, mate, there's a reason for that. So I look forward to hearing you Well, I look forward to hearing you tell me why.
Fortunately, it was Jordan's streak and not his season that ended at home against the Bucks. Seconds before halftime, Jordan crash-landed on his right knee in a sequence that stunned 17,335 Bulls fans. It took Jordan 6 minutes to get to his feet in what trainer Mark Feil called a strained right knee and hamstring. Jordan played just 12 minutes in the second half, and Doug Collins said he lost all concentration at that moment, particularly after having torn up his own knee during his playing career.
Oh, yeah.
The Bulls managed an extraordinary 7 field goals only in the first half, including one in the second term to shoot 19% in the first half.
Wow.
As Jordan hit the deck after heavy contact with podcast favourite Paul McKeskey. The Bulls trailed 52-29 at the half and were down 30 at one point in the final term.
That is absolutely brutal. Very interesting. I had no idea about this, so this is one of the great reasons why going back through the archives can open up all these new findings, mate. So well done on that front. Okay, let's move on. In the solitary NBA game played on this date, which is the 14th of December, Dallas wished they never took the flight to Portland after being spanked to the tune of 134-100. The Mavericks' leading scorer was on the mark. He acquired 23 points. Portland's Kenny Carr was driven, pulling down 21 rebounds, and the Blazers' main man was Clyde Drexler with 22 points. Now, on the 15th of December, there were no games, but of course, there was a Bulls recap.
Did you know that Clyde Drexler's middle name is Clarence?
No. But apparently it helps you pronounce it if you say it with a spoon in your mouth. It doesn't even make sense. It was a bad joke.
And you've also probably never heard it because I just made it up.
Like I didn't go, yeah, I knew that. It would have been worse.
Bob reported that MJ was fine after his injury scare and was preparing to play in the Bulls' next game against New Jersey the following day. Doug Collins commented that had Jordan not been the athlete that he was, it may have ended much worse. Former Bull Orlando Woolridge wasn't expected to play in the game for New Jersey with groin soreness, which he suffered in the Nets game against Boston. Woolridge had been looking forward to his first game back in Chicago after his off-season departure. Also in 86-87 Bulls minutia, Michael Jordan had been made aware he was being considered for a guest spot on Miami Vice.
Oh, my goodness. That's excellent. I don't even know what to say with that, but that is a fantastic bit of minutia. Tidbit City. Jordan was fortunate. Remember back to Jordan's first game, as we covered in one of the early episodes of NB85. He was clobbered at the hoop by great friend of the show, Jeff Ruland, episode 45 of the podcast. But yeah, Jordan went down like a sack of spuds on that day, and that was his first game. He's copped subsequent massive knocks and possible injuries which could have derailed him for considerable time, yet he's fought back pretty much every time. Of course, he did sit out with a broken foot for 64 of the best, but still avoided numerous other calamities. Players of the week. For December 7, Tom Chambers of Seattle. 31.3 points, 9 rebounds, 4 assists and 1.7 steals per game as Seattle went 2-1. On the 14th of December, Dominique Wilkins of Atlanta. 31.5 points, 5.3 rebounds, 4 assists and 1.5 steals a game as the Hawks went 4-0. The individual highs for this period of time. Dominique, of course, 57 points versus Chicago on the 10th of December. The rebounds leader was David Greenwood of San Antonio Spurs, formerly of the Bulls. He had 22 against the Sonics on the 4th of December. Isiah Thomas was the leading assist man with 18 versus Denver on the 6th of December. The NBA standings through December 15th. Our division leaders were in the Atlantic, Boston were 14-7. In the Central, Atlanta were 18-4, so what a great start there from the Hawks. They were omnipresent. In the Midwest, Dallas were 14-8. In the Pacific, specifically, the Lakers were 16-5. And Chicago were 10-11. They went 3-5 in this span. And the New Jersey Nets were 4-18 for just a .182 winning percentage. And the Clippers were 4-17, mildly better by virtue of playing one less game, and they were .190 on the season. That rounds out this period of time, mate. Thanks again for being a part of the show as always. Love your work. Anything at all you'd like to add before we conclude episode 4 of NB87.
Not only am I getting to know the 86-87 Bulls better, but I'm also getting to know many other players in the NBA a lot more intimately, such as Clyde Clarence Drexler. Giddy up.
Thanks for listening. I hope you enjoyed the show and share my web address with your friends and colleagues, inallairness.com. Check out the podcast archive for plenty more episodes with high-profile guests. Follow me on Twitter at inallairness. Please add your like to the show's social hub, facebook.com/inallairness. Join me next time for another edition of the show. How's your form? Just creating names for players.
Extraordinary.
I'm so glad I didn't actually just say, yeah, knew that, read that on his card.
Yeah.
I thought, do I just say yes? There are certain players, though, whose names from their trading cards you just remember straight up, especially their middle names, like, Darren O'Shea Blaylock, for example.
John Macbeth Paxson. Horace Jr. Grant.
Yes. Wow, okay. Yeah, okay. Well, can I say the same thing 3 times in a row?
Yeah, wow.
In other games. Yeah, well. Oh, dear.